So imagine you're setting up a high-end IT security system for a corporate network.
Right. Yeah, like a major enterprise setup.
Exactly. And the baseline expectation is just basic functionality and safety. You configure the firewalls, you set up the intrusion detection, and you let the algorithms monitor the traffic.
Right, the network admins go home feeling secure. The system watches the perimeter so the humans don't have to.
Yes. But imagine if that system's sensitivity threshold was just, I don't know, dialed down to 0.
Oh, that would be a nightmare.
Right. Instead of just flagging actual unauthorized access attempts from the outside, it starts flagging every single employee.
Like just someone logging in at 9:00 a.m.
Exactly. It flags Jim in accounting logging in as a catastrophic breach. It starts sending these deafening, high-priority alerts to the IT team because someone downloaded a completely normal PDF.
So it's interpreting normal data packets as malicious viruses.
Yeah, and the system designed to protect the network essentially attacks the network. It floods it with false alarms, and it renders the actual administrators completely paralyzed.
Because the defense mechanism is consuming all the available bandwidth.
Right.
The vigilant system itself basically becomes the primary vulnerability.
And that brings us to today. Welcome to today's highly focused deep dive. We are looking at a profoundly dense piece of source material for you today.
It really is. I mean, it's incredibly concise.
Yeah, it's essentially just a fragment of a text, but it carries massive psychological weight. We are examining an excerpt titled The Shadows of a Restless Mind, and we're focusing squarely on its core theme, which is the dark side of overthinking.
Such a powerful phrase.
It is. And the mission of this deep dive is to deconstruct these exact words. We want to explore the mechanics of how we trap ourselves in our own cognitive defense systems. So, okay, let's unpack this. The text roots this entire phenomenon in a very specific condition, which it calls the restless mind.
Right, and to understand the dark side of overthinking, you really have to look at the cognitive environment where it actually originates.
The breeding ground, basically.
Exactly. The source explicitly chooses the word restless. And we need to strip away the poetic layer here and look at the functional anatomy of that term.
Because restless doesn't just mean busy, right?
No, not at all. Restlessness is not just a high level of activity. I mean, an active, engaged mind processing a complex task is highly efficient.
It's doing what it's supposed to do.
Right. But a restless mind implies a lack of cognitive homeostasis. It is this constant, agitated scanning for problems in the environment.
Even when there are no problems.
Exactly. When no actual problems exist in the immediate physical reality, it's still looking for them.
So it is exactly like that IT system just running aggressive background scans on a totally empty hard drive.
That's a perfect way to put it. And what's fascinating here is how the source frames the mind in this scenario.
How so?
Well, it isn't framing the mind as a passive instrument. You know, like a tool you pick up to solve a math equation and then just put down when you're finished.
Right.
It frames it as an autonomous entity. If left unmanaged, a restless mind defaults to threat detection.
It just does that on its own.
Yeah, neurologically speaking, we're talking about the default mode network, or the DMN.
Oh, I heard of this.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Oh.
When you aren't focused on a specific demanding task, your brain doesn't just, power down like a computer.
Right. It doesn't just go to sleep.
Exactly. The DMN kicks in, and it starts time traveling. It ruminates on a weird conversation you had yesterday, or it projects forward to a meeting you have next week.
I want to inject a different analogy here because visualizing that default mode network really helps ground what restlessness actually feels like.
Go for it.
Think about your smartphone. Imagine it's constantly searching for a Wi-Fi signal, but you are in a completely dead zone.
Oh, yeah, like out in the woods or something.
Right. When you're out in the middle of nowhere, the phone doesn't just accept that there's no network.
It doesn't just say, oh, well, I'll stop trying.
No, it actively ramps up its antenna power. It constantly sends out these pings, desperately trying to handshake with a router that just isn't there.
And we all know what happens to the phone when it does that.
Right. In that process, it heavily drains its own battery. The device physically heats up in your hand, and it accomplishes absolutely zero data transfer.
It's totally wasted energy, and the mechanics align perfectly with the brain.
Really?
Yeah, the restless brain is consuming significant metabolic energy. It is generating stress hormones like cortisol, elevating your heart rate.
Burning through the battery.
Exactly, depleting your cognitive battery, all to establish a connection to a hypothetical threat that isn't even there.
Okay, but I do want to push back on this framing slightly because I feel like there's a very fine line here.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, you, the person listening to this right now, you have a curious mind. You actively seek out deep dives, you consume complex information, you want to learn.
Sure.
So how do we cleanly distinguish between a curious mind, which we generally consider a massive intellectual asset, and the restless mind that the source is diagnosing as the root of the problem?
That is a great question.
Because they both fundamentally involve searching and processing information, don't they?
They do, and distinguishing them in the moment is actually notoriously difficult because they masquerade as the same activity.
They look identical from the outside.
Right. But their underlying neurochemical drivers and directions are completely opposed.
Okay, break that down for me.
So curiosity is expansive. It's outward-looking. It asks, what is actually out there?
Okay.
And it relies on the dopamine system. It rewards you for discovering new objective data to build a wider understanding of reality.
Right, feels good to learn something new.
Exactly.
Okay.
But restlessness is contracting. It's defensive. It asks, what is going to hurt me?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's driven by the amygdala and the cortisol system. It is not looking for objective truth at all. It's just looking for validation of a pre-existing anxiety.
So it's heavily biased from the start.
Totally. A curious mind finds a new piece of data and integrates it. A restless mind finds a new piece of data and immediately weaponizes it.
Weaponizes it. Like how?
It uses it as a brand new variable to worry about.
Man. So the curious mind builds a map, and the restless mind builds a bunker.
That is perfectly stated, yes. And the restless mind eventually exhausts itself.
Because of all that wasted battery power.
Right. When you run that internal Wi-Fi search long enough without finding a real threat, the brain just cannot justify that massive expenditure of energy.
So what does it do?
Well, to validate its own exhaustion, the restless mind actually begins to manufacture threats from benign stimuli.
Which produces the exact output the source text warns about.
Exactly.
The engine is the restless mind, but it doesn't produce actionable ideas or rational thoughts. The text explicitly states it produces shadows.
Shadows.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because structurally, a shadow is entirely dependent on distortion.
Right. It's not a real object.
No. You can't put a shadow on a scale. It has absolutely no mass. It is just a two-dimensional, elongated projection of a three-dimensional reality.
And a shadow requires two things to exist, right?
Yeah.
It needs an obstruction, and it needs a light source.
Okay.
In this cognitive framework, overthinking doesn't act as a spotlight that clarifies reality. It acts as an obscuring force.
It makes things harder to see.
Yes. It projects these massive, disproportionate shapes over our everyday interactions and our decisions. We react to the projection rather than the actual object casting it.
Okay, let's ground that in an adult, everyday reality for everyone listening.
Let's do it.
Say you get a text message from your boss at 4:30 p.m. on a Friday, and it just says, "Can we chat first thing Monday?"
Oh, the classic anxiety test.
Exactly. Now, the text message is the object. It's just a request for a meeting.
Very simple.
But the restless mind takes that object and it stretches it. By Saturday morning, the shadow of that text message is the assumption that you're being fired.
Oh, absolutely.
And then by Sunday night, the shadow covers your entire career trajectory, your financial stability, and your professional identity.
It just balloons out of control.
The object is literally 6 words long, but the shadow covers your entire weekend in dread.
And the crazy part is, your physiology reacts exclusively to the shadow.
What do you mean?
Well, your nervous system doesn't know the difference between an actual impending job loss and just the cognitive projection of one.
Really? The body reacts the same way?
Yes. You experience the elevated heart rate, the insomnia, the shallow breathing, all because you are interacting with a distortion.
That is wild.
Cognitive behavioral therapy often focuses precisely on this mechanism, identifying cognitive distortions like catastrophizing, which is basically the academic term for staring at shadows.
So we spend all our time fighting this massive projection on the wall because that's where our focus is directed.
Exactly.
But a shadow's size and shape change depending on the angle of the light, right?
Right, and this raises an important question. If we are constantly confronted by these massive, intimidating shadows in our personal and professional lives, where is the light source actually positioned?
Okay, let's think about that.
Think about the fundamental physics of just walking outdoors. If you are walking down a path and you clearly see your own shadow stretching out 50 feet in front of you, where is the sun?
Well, the sun has to be directly behind me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The light is at your back. You are facing away from it.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Consequently, your field of vision is entirely dominated by your own shadow and the shadows of the obstructions around you.
Right, because you won't turn around.
Right. When the restless mind engages in chronic overthinking, it is almost always because we have turned our backs on a fundamental, uncomfortable truth.
Something we just don't want to deal with.
Exactly. It might be a core fear of inadequacy or a failing relationship we just refuse to acknowledge.
Or like deep-seated imposter syndrome.
Yes. By refusing to turn around and directly face the harsh light of that core issue, we just keep our gaze fixed forward on the distorted projections.
We'd rather look at the shadow.
We analyze the shadows, we measure them. We create complex spreadsheets to track the shadows.
Because analyzing the shadow feels like work.
It really does.
It feels productive to obsess over what the boss's text message meant, but it's a completely hollow exercise because a distortion, by definition, cannot be accurately measured.
Right. It's not real.
You can't solve a shadow. You can only solve the object blocking the light.
And the longer you stare the distortion, the deeper you sink into the behavioral trap that the source material ultimately builds toward.
Which the text calls the dark side of overthinking.
The dark side.
Which, to be honest, sounds like an oxymoron in modern knowledge work.
How so?
Well, our culture heavily incentivizes and rewards deep thinking. Measure twice, cut once.
Oh, for sure.
We demand data-driven decisions, risk mitigation, comprehensive analysis before taking any action. The boundary between thorough preparation and toxic overthinking seems almost invisible.
It is invisible until you look at the behavioral output.
Okay.
Society praises analytical thinking because it assumes the thinking will eventually culminate in a concrete action.
That there's a point to it.
Right. But the source is explicitly warning about the dark side because overthinking crosses a very specific, dangerous psychological threshold.
What threshold is that?
It crosses from being a tool for preparation into a subconscious mechanism for paralysis.
Oh, so at a certain point, gathering more data stops being about navigating reality and it becomes a shield to avoid participating in it.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, human beings possess a profound intolerance for uncertainty.
We hate not knowing.
We despise it.
Yeah.
We are biologically wired to predict our environment to survive.
Sure.
But in a complex modern world, absolute certainty is completely impossible.
Can't know everything.
You can't. But the restless mind offers this fake bargain. It whispers that if you just analyze a situation from 100 different angles, if you run every possible catastrophic simulation in your head,
then you'll be safe.
right, you can somehow inoculate yourself against failure. Overthinking is basically an attempt to exert control over an uncontrollable future.
It's like, if I worry about every possible way this product launch could fail, I am somehow preventing it from failing.
Exactly.
It is a total illusion of control. We substitute the cognitive effort of worrying for the physical effort of doing.
And the biological cost is huge. The brain requires roughly 20% of the body's energy just to maintain baseline operations.
Oh, just to keep the lights on.
Yeah. So when you engage in aggressive overthinking, you are heavily taxing your prefrontal cortex. You induce decision fatigue before you've even made a single decision.
You're exhausted before you even start.
You burn through all the cognitive resources required to actually execute a task because you spent all of it simulating the task's failure.
So what does this all mean?
Well,
I mean, if we follow the trajectory here, from the restless mind to the projected shadows to the paralysis of overthinking, does the dark side imply something worse than just wasting energy?
it definitely does.
Because I'm thinking, is the danger that by hyper-fixating on the shadows, we actually engineer the exact negative outcomes we're trying to avoid?
Yes.
Like, imagine you are walking down a steep mountain trail, and you become entirely fixated on a shadow moving in the brush that you think is a predator.
You're terrified.
You freeze. You stare at it. And because your attention is entirely consumed by the distortion, you step blindly backward right off the actual physical edge of the cliff.
That is a brilliant way to put it. And that is the ultimate penalty of the dark side. Overthinking violently narrows your peripheral vision.
You stop seeing what's really around you.
When your cognitive bandwidth is completely consumed by managing an imagined catastrophe, you become totally blind to the practical, immediate reality surrounding you.
Right.
Take the example of the ambiguous text from the boss.
Okay, let's go back to that.
If you spend the entire weekend paralyzed by the shadow of getting fired, you might walk into work on Monday completely defensive, sleep-deprived, and hostile.
Oh, absolutely, you'd be a wreck.
And then what happens? You end up performing poorly, or you pick a fight with someone, which actually damages your professional reputation.
So you literally created the crisis you were afraid of.
Exactly.
Wow. And if you had just picked up the phone on Friday at 4:35 p.m., called the boss and said, "Hey, just saw your text. Anything urgent we need to prep for?"
Then you step into the light of action.
And the shadow vanishes instantly.
Because action is finite. You make the call, the reality is revealed, and the task is closed.
It's done.
It's done. But the restless mind inherently rejects finite action. Shadows are infinite.
Because they can be anything.
Right. A shadow constantly shifts and changes shape depending on the angle of the light and the movement of the object. You can analyze a shadow forever.
Wow.
By choosing to overthink, the restless mind guarantees its own continued existence. It prefers the infinite complexity of the distortion to the finite simplicity of a solution.
We trap ourselves in a feedback loop.
A total loop.
We overthink to reduce anxiety, but the act of overthinking generates more shadows, which creates more anxiety.
Which requires more overthinking.
The dark side isn't a destination. It is a self-constructed environment where you voluntarily block out your own light.
You end up dedicating your life to fighting ghosts and effectively removing yourself from the physical world.
The cognitive defense system you built to protect yourself becomes the exact mechanism that isolates you.
It really does.
To bring this all into focus for you listening today, the few words of our source material, the shadows of a restless mind, the dark side of overthinking, they serve as a profoundly sharp diagnostic tool.
They absolutely do.
The danger of overthinking isn't just the stress it causes you in the moment. The true systemic danger is that it forces you to inhabit a distorted projection of reality rather than reality itself.
It convinces you that the frantic search for a problem is a productive use of your intellect.
And it isn't.
It is the ultimate misallocation of human intelligence. You deploy your highest cognitive functions to map out a labyrinth that doesn't actually exist.
Your capacity to analyze, your desire to synthesize deep information, these are massive strengths. They are the exact reasons you engage with deep dives like this in the first place.
They're great qualities.
But that intellectual horsepower requires strict governance. You have to monitor your own internal systems. When you feel that cognitive battery overheating, when you sense your mind desperately pinging for a threat in a dead zone, you have to recognize the restless mind taking over.
And the diagnostic question you have to ask yourself in that exact moment is, am I gathering this information to make a decision, or am I gathering this information to avoid making a decision?
That is the boundary line right there, between preparation and paralysis.
Exactly.
As we wrap up today's analysis, there is one final lingering component of this metaphor that warrants your attention. We've mapped out the restless mind, we've dissected the shadows of cognitive distortion, and we've explored the paralyzing dark side of overthinking. But shadows cannot exist in total darkness.
No, a shadow is always evidence of illumination hitting an obstruction.
Exactly. So if your overthinking is constantly casting these massive, intimidating shadows across the path of your life, what is the unseen light source standing directly behind you?
That's the real question.
What is the fundamental glaring reality that you are refusing to turn around and face? Is it an unacknowledged fear of failure? Is it a desperate, unrealistic demand for absolute certainty in a world that is inherently chaotic?
It could be.
What is the blinding truth you are avoiding, choosing instead to stare at the distorted monsters on the wall? Leave that question hanging in the air. Mull it over the next time your internal alarm system starts blaring, because sometimes a critical threat alert is just a speck of dust crossing a sensor, and the most productive thing you can do is simply reach up, turn the alarm off, and get back to reality.